Okay, welcome to GSE IDD workshop regarding assessments that can be created in UBlearns. In order to create an assessment, you have to be inside of a content area. I am currently inside of a content area named Weekly Units. I'm going to go inside one of the units though to create my assessments. And you'll see, since we're in a content area, we have our tabs across the top. And the tab that you're going to want to access, obviously, is Assessments. And you will see that there are 5 options. I, today, am only going to go over the top 3. These will be the ones that are most commonly used by faculty members as they create their courses. So we'll start with tests. And to create a test, you can do it from the Assessments tab, or you can come down to Course Tools in the control panel and create it from there. And you'll see it takes you to the same place. No matter where you are, when you click on tests, it'll take you to the same place. So inside of test, surveys, and pools are those 3 options. You can create a test right from here. And you can see that I have 2 sample tests in here already. I can click Build Test, and this will bring up the screen where I give it a name. And I could give it a description. And you'll see that you get your content editor like you do in other areas. So if you wanted to add a picture or an attachment or a video, you could. You can also put your instructions here for the students. And when you hit submit, it just basically creates the test canvas and it brings you right to it. When you are in a test, you have several options. You can create a question and build it right from here. And these are your options that you get. There's quite a few. Some of the more popular are obviously multiple choice, true, false, maybe an essay question, maybe fill in multiple blanks or fill in the blank. We can go over, the more popular ones. You may also reuse a question. Now, what this means is if you had created a pool of questions already, so when we went into tests originally, we had tests, surveys, and pools as our options. If you were to create a pool of questions or bring in a pool of questions, maybe from publisher content, sometimes they have test banks that are available to faculty and can be uploaded into Blackboard. You could create a question set, which you could select, say 10 questions that you wanted the students to take, and you could randomize them. You could create a random block, which means if you had, say, a pool of 50 questions, but you only wanted 20 to display, and for it to be a different 20 questions each time the test was opened, that would be a random block. And you can also find questions, which would be questions that are already used in another test. So you could link to where that question appears in another test. You could do it that way. Uploading questions. This would be if you had maybe a Word document that had your test on it, but in order to upload it into UBlearns, it has to be in a certain format. So you would have to convert it to that certain format, and it's usually a CSV file. And the questions and answers, have to be listed in a certain way in order for the upload to be successful. There are also tools out there that can assist you with this. There is a tool called Respondus 4.0. in which you can upload your Word document and then follow through a few steps, and it will convert the document for you to be able to upload it into UBlearns. So it's a great thing to do if you do have a number of tests that you've used in the past, maybe in an on-ground course that were in Word documents. And if you were to convert them all and put them into UBlearns, you only have to do it once. So there's a bit of upfront work to do, but once they're in there, they're in there. And then once you do have a series of tests within your test area, you can use those too to create random blocks or question sets. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Question settings over here. You could do this before you started creating your test, and then these settings would apply to every question. So if you wanted to have a different default point value, like this is 10, you could change it to 5, and then every question you created after that time would be worth 5 points each. That obviously can also be changed by going into an individual test and changing it manually. Maybe question by question you want them to have different points. But this is where it asks you if you want, partial credit, negative points for wrong answers, an option to assign questions as extra credit, random ordering of questions, horizontal or vertical display of answers, specific numbering options for answers. So there's a lot of options within the question settings itself. So we could just go ahead and create a question. So I'm going to create a multiple choice. And so I click on multiple choice, and it brings up my content editor as usual. You can give the question a title. You don't have to. It's not required, as you can tell, because there's no orange asterisk. But you could do this if you wanted to. Maybe you wanted to put the topic in there. Maybe you don't have to number it because it'll automatically number it for you. But if you wanted to maybe put the topic or unit or something that has to pertain to the content of the question, you could do that. But like I said, you can also leave it blank. So creating the question, this is where we would put the text. So I could just say, how are you? And then coming down here, I start to get my options. So how do I want my answers numbered? Do I want Arabic, Roman, uppercase, lowercase? And I selected lowercase. Do I want them to be vertical? Yes, I do want them to be vertical, but I could have them be horizontal. Do I want to allow partial credit? Do I want to show answers in random order? Showing answers in random order obviously is one of the ways that we can cut down on cheating or sharing of answers. But just remember that if you do have if one of your answers is all of the above, and you put it in random order, that would look a little odd. So you just be mindful if you do pick random order that you don't have one of those selections like none of the above, or actually none of the above, all of the above, something that indicates order, I guess, since we're going to be in random order. You can also select the number of answers. So maybe you want there to be more than 4. It goes all the way up to 100, which is kind of crazy, but defaults to 4, so we'll leave it there. You can also, the default is 4, and that's the minimal number, but you can remove answers. So if you only wanted to have 3 possible answers, you would just click remove to any one of these answer boxes. When you are putting in your possible answers, so my question was, how are you? There's fine, great, super, and say so. Those are my 4 possible answers. Now, when you're building the question and you're putting in the answers, at this point you do have to select the correct answer. Since this is an auto-graded option, you do have to select the correct answer. So I can just say my correct answer is super by clicking on the button next to that particular answer. So there's my answers. Now here's another option for you. If you wanted to give feedback for correct answers and feedback for incorrect answers, you would enter it into these boxes. So, for example, if they selected an answer and it was incorrect, your response or your feedback could be, that answer is incorrect. Please refer to chapter 2, for further clarification or something like that. Or if the answer was correct, you could say, correct, great job, something like that to give them further feedback. And this here, categories and keywords, you can add categories, topics, level of difficulty, keywords. This is a way to filter questions further on down the road. So say you wanted to assign a level of difficulty to this question, and then later on, maybe when you're building the final, if it's comprehensive, you could select, when you're building the final, you could search levels of difficulty. And if you wanted all of the questions on your final to be a high level of difficulty, you could filter those questions if you had added the level of difficulty to this question. You could filter them by like high level of difficulty, and then it would pull all of those. And that could be you creating your final. Instructor notes, if you wanted to add a note to yourself, this would not be seen by the students as they were taking the test. Something to the effect of, I chose this question because it covers learning objective number 3, or something like that, that you wanted to remind yourself of. It is not required, as you can tell, because it's not indicated that it's required by the orange asterisk. It's just something extra that you could do for yourself. So be mindful of that. You could use that for yourself. So when we get to the bottom, where we have created our question text and our possible answers and chosen our correct answer, we can submit, which will create the question, or we can submit and create another. So say our next question that we wanted to create was also a multiple choice. We would click the submit and create another tab. And that would take us into the canvas for creating a multiple choice question again. I'm just going to hit submit. And so now you'll see that here's my question, multiple choice, how are you, success, question created, and it shows that this is the correct answer. Once again, that will not display to students. It just shows to me because I'm in the canvas and this test has not been deployed. We will go over how to do that. So now if I wanted to create something else, another one, I would come to my create question again, and maybe I'll choose an either or question. Okay. So now we take a look at this. Same thing. Canvas for the question text, answer orientation, and then here, because it's an either or question, you do have answer choices. So it can be a yes, no, agree, disagree, right, wrong, true, false. Those are the either ors. You will also see there's correct feedback, correct response feedback, and incorrect response feedback, just like there was in the other question, and categories and keywords and instructor notes. So let's say I wanted to, we will make it a agree, disagree. And my question text will be something like, today is a great day. I'm just doing very general questions, obviously. Vertical orientation for my options. Today is a great day. The correct answer is agree. So we're choosing our correct answer right here. Again, I could give it feedback for correct and incorrect, and I could associate categories and keywords and levels of difficulty and topics and give myself notes. I submit, and now I have 2 questions, okay? A multiple choice and an either or. Because I did not change my question settings, they defaulted to 10 points. If I was to click on this, I could update what I wanted the point value to be. I could make it extra credit if I wanted to, okay? So I could make this question 5 points and submit that. And I could come here And I could make this question 3 points if I wanted to and submit that. So now you see that my point distribution is not the default of 10. If you had a number of questions and you wanted to change all of them at one time, you could select all, points, make 4, and then update. And what it'll do is it'll change the point value to the value you chose for all of your questions. So that is how you would, change the point value for all the questions, just in case you had not done your question settings before the test was created and you realized it afterwards, you would be able to change them all. But once again, just because I changed them all, I can still go in and change individuals if I want to. Okay, so the points are updated. And this shows me the description, it shows me the instructions, it shows me the total number of questions and the total number of points so far. I can also move the questions around if I wanted to change the order just by dragging on the left, dragging up and down. You can also do it over here with keyboard accessible reordering. So I could say this one I want to move up and submit, and it will change it and tell me that the items have been reordered. Okay, so that is how you create questions manually within the test canvas. So let's just talk about a few of these options we have. Calculated formula obviously really applies more for math or science, same with calculated numeric. Either or, essay, file response, in which they would upload a file. An essay, they would type in their answer. Fill in the multiple blanks. So you would provide the multiple answers that may be correct. Fill in the blank. You would provide the one answer that's correct. Fill in the blank can be tricky because if they do not type it exactly as you have typed it, it would come up wrong. But when you're doing these fill in the blanks, it asks for several possible answers. So maybe the answer capitalized, maybe the answer not capitalized. Maybe if there's a couple of words in the answer, a period at the end or no period at the end, or, one space in between each word or two. So you have to kind of take into account all of the possibilities of how the student may answer it. Misspellings obviously will come up as incorrect, so that is something to remember. Hotspot questions, these are kind of neat. If you wanted to have a map and the students had to pinpoint and name the countries, I guess, or, the states in the United States, it would display the map, and then they would click on, if the question's asked, where is New York? And they would click on New York, and that would be the hotspot. And so you would create that, so you could do it that way with just clicking on the correct answer. Jumbled sentence isn't really used that much. Matching obviously is something that is popular. Multiple answer, multiple choice. So multiple answer is just like, creating a multiple choice, but obviously you would click that little circle next to the number of correct answers instead of just one. Opinion scale, Likert scale. This would be one where there'd be a scale of options and they would choose correct one. Ordering, putting things in order. Quiz bowl, short answer, true, false. One thing I want to mention is if you do want your tests to be auto-graded, which involves you not having to do any manual grading, you do not want to use essay or file response or short answer, because those are ones that you would have to check and read to make sure that they're correct. You can use a combination of auto-graded and not auto-graded questions within a test. The grade for the test will not be released to the student until you have graded the portion of the test that's not auto-graded, so that the score will be held until you provide a value for their essay response or their file response or their short answer. So they won't be getting a partial score for their test before you're done grading. So that's good. It holds it back for you. So that's pretty much how you create tests. Now I've created this test and I'm done and I say okay. And it sits in my test bank. And you'll see under deployed, it says no. So it is sitting here, but it is not visible, nor can it be taken by any of my students. What I want to do to deploy it is I would come to the content area in which I want the test to be housed, so say Unit 1, and I would come up to Assessments and I would choose Test, and it asks me if I want to create a new test or if I want to select an existing test. I want to select an existing test. So I will click on Test 1 and I will click Submit. Now, it doesn't just put it right into the content area. There are a few test options that are available to you. So here's my test name. I could change it if I wanted to. I could change the color of the test name also if I wanted to. I could add more of a description. Here it asks me, show test description to students before they begin the test. Yes, I would like that to happen. Here are my test instructions. Show instructions to students before they begin the test. Yes, I would also like that to happen. Open test in a new window. If the test is opened in a new window, then they will have a Blackboard tab open, and then they will have another tab open with the test in it. That is completely up to you if you want to have them have two windows open while this test is going. Test availability, make link available. Yes, if you do not check that, they won't see it. So you definitely want to do that. Add a new announcement for this test. If you choose yes, then an announcement will go out saying that the test is available. So your students will see that in the course. Multiple attempts. So right now it's defaulted to people only being, or students only being able to take this test once. However, if you wanted to do multiple attempts, or unlimited. So if I click multiple attempts, now I have two options. Allow unlimited attempts, or I can select the number of attempts I want them to be able to have. So I'm going to say 3. Now, if they have 3 attempts, it then asks me how I want to score them. So do I want the score to show in the grade center as the last time they took it, the highest grade, the lowest grade, the first time they took it, or an average of the 3 attempts that I'm giving them? This is a choice here. I'll go with average of graded attempts. Therefore, automatically in the Grade Center, it is going to show the average of the times that they took it, and that will be their score. Forced completion, once they start the test, they have to finish it. They can't save it and walk away and come back to it 3 hours later. They need to complete it all in one sitting. Timer, I can set a timer. I can give them, it's a 2-question test, so maybe I'll give them, 3 minutes. But say, obviously, a test that you would be giving maybe 20, 25, 50 questions. It's up to you to choose the amount of time you would like to give them. When there is a timer on a test, they will see a bar, so they will be able to see how much time they have left. When it gets down to, I believe, less than 10 minutes, it turns red to give them, some warning that their time is getting short. If they do not finish by the end of the time that is allotted, you can choose to have auto submit be on or off. So if auto submit is off, they will be able to continue after the timer is up. If auto submit is on, if they are not done when the timer is up, the test gets automatically submitted just with however many questions they answered. So if they have 5 questions left and the time is up, tests get submitted with them not being able to answer those last 5 questions. You can display the test. So say you want it to be open for, 24 hours. You could say, have it open from April 30th at 11:55 until May 1st at 11:55. Although when they access it, since it's forced completion and since you set a timer, those will also apply. So if they were to access it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the 30th, they still have 60 minutes and they still have to complete it in one sitting. So you're having it display for 24 hours, but that does not mean that they get 24 hours to be able to take it. Passwords, this would be as if you're using a third-party tool, say for test integrity. So maybe you are using a lockdown browser, or maybe you are using like an online, what do you want to call it, proctor. So these programs usually have a password that automatically fills in when they're associated with tests. So that's what the password feature is for. Test availability exceptions. This would be if you wanted to apply, I'm sorry, I'm just looking. If you wanted to apply extra time or extra attempts for certain students or groups of students. So that would be, time and a half, or they get to take it 2 more times than the allotted 3. So this is how you would put those exceptions into place. Due date, you can give the test a due date. So perhaps, since you already maybe made it available and put a timer on it, the students will know when they're supposed to take it, but you can set a due date for this, and you can decide if students would be allowed to take it after the due date has passed or not. So if you do not allow them to take the test after the due date is passed, you would click, you'd have to click due date, and you'd also have to click that, so that they wouldn't be able to access the test after the due date has passed. Self-assessment options. The default is that a grade center score is shown. So a score for this test is shown in the grade center so the students can see how they did. However, you can hide the results from yourself and from the grade center so that it actually doesn't factor in to their final score. Maybe this is something you just wanted them to take for themselves, but you won't be able to see how they did. I don't know if this is something that's a popular option. It's just in case you wanted to just have them do it for their own edification. Okay, so test results and feedback. So now this is how you decide how you want their scores to be displayed. So you have actually a number of choices. Do you want them to know what their score is right after they submit the test? So you could say right after they submit, I want them to see their score. Now, if you choose these options, right after they submit the test and it goes in, they will be able to see just their score. That's it. They'll be able to see just 80 out of 100. However, if you choose to have them see all the answers that they put in, all the answers that were correct, all the answers that were submitted, show the incorrect answers, show the feedback. So if you did have that feedback option where if the answer was incorrect, you said, please refer to chapter 2, that would show to them. So this is where you choose what you want them to see. You get 2 rules. So you could say after submission, on a specific date, a one-time view, after the due date, after availability end date, after all attempts are graded. So if you choose after all attempts are graded, the students will not know their scores until everybody has taken it. And then you can actually have two. So if I choose that, fine. And then I could say, and I just want it to be a one-time view. A one-time view maybe of, so after all attempts are graded, they can just see their score. Then I want it to be a one-time view of these items. So that's not always available to them as the course goes on. Completely up to you how you want to do it. You just have a lot of options there. Test presentation. Would you like the questions to be displayed all at once? So say all 50 questions will be available to them at one time and they just scroll down. Or would you like to present the questions one at a time? So they will just have one question on the screen, and when they answer and save their answer, they go to the next. You may also prohibit backtracking, so that doesn't let them change an answer to a previous question. Randomize your questions so that the order is not the same every time it's opened. So students can't say, hey, what do you have for number one? Because their number ones are going to be different from each other. So these are your test options, and you get quite a few of them, as you can see. And once I hit submit on this, it will deploy my test into my content area. So now here it is, and you can see that it is available, because if it wasn't, it would have this up above saying item is not available. So you can now click on this and access the test. So you'll see my description's there, my instructions are there. It tells them they have a time limit. It tells them that the timer will expire and they'll be notified, and that they still may continue because that's what I chose. It also tells them that they have to complete the test in one sitting, that they have multiple attempts, and that it does have a due date and they can't start it past the due date. So there are all of the options that I chose, and they can see them. And when they want to start taking the test, they just click begin. Now, because I created this test and I did have it factor into the Grade Center, if we go into the Grade Center, you will see that there is a column for it. Okay, so that was automatically created, and it has my stats. It tells the points possible, it tells the due date, it says it's included in the calculations, and that it is a test, and its primary display is score. So that is creating tests. Let's go back into the test surveys and pools so that we can talk about surveys. Surveys are built the same way as a test is. The difference being that they are not graded. They also, please take this survey. They're also anonymous. So even though you'll be able to see in the Grade Center that a student has taken the survey, because a green check will be in the box, you will not know what their specific answers are. You will be able to access the statistics for the survey, which will show you how many people answered this answer to this question, how many people answered this answer to that question, but it will not associate any of those answers with a specific student. So this would be something you could use if you wanted to do midterm, like a stop, start, continue survey. What should I stop doing? What should I start doing? What should I continue doing? You could use this as a way for students to give you feedback that's anonymous. Excuse me. So like I said, surveys are created the exact same way as tests are. And you'll see you have a lot of the same options. Same thing with find questions, upload questions, question settings, but there's not really, score involved. It's just some of the question settings that were also available for tests. You can assign to surveys. So that's just if you wanted to, really just maybe gauge the student's interest or feedback regarding maybe something in class, or like I said, like a midterm kind of course survey. You could use surveys for this to get anonymous responses to some questions and just gather some feedback and to let them know that it's not graded. So it's not something that they have to worry about getting a grade for or being dinged for not taking it. It doesn't affect their grade whatsoever. So those are surveys. Now there's also pools, as I kind of mentioned before. And pools, like I said, um, allow you to bring in a number of questions. So say like I said, you had a test bank. Um, you could you can create questions once again individually, or um, you could bring in publisher test banks into your course and then use them as a pool to create a test from a pool because you have all of these questions to choose from. So it's an inventory of questions and it can be searched. And when you do have a pool that is built, I don't have one right here, but when you have a pool that is built, and you say, you want to find the questions that you want, you can filter your pool, by what you want for your tests. So here you see the categories, topics, levels of difficulty, keywords, that's where they come in. Or you could say, I want my questions for this test to be pulled from pool for week 1, and then it would bring up all the questions for week 1, and then you would choose the ones that you wanted, or you could choose all of them. Or you could say, I want my pool to be pulled from week 1, but I only want it to be either or questions. And then it would just give you the either or questions from the pool from week 1. So that is how you can use pools to build a test from questions that you already have. So if you wanted it to be comprehensive, or if you wanted to use a publisher test bank, this is how you would create the test using pools. And let's go into a test again, just so I can show you what it's going to look like. So say we go into test 1 and we edit it. And we use create random block. See, here it is again. This is how I would browse and select within my pools to create my random block. I don't really have, I have pool 2, right, which has all my pool questions. And oh no, I didn't create pool 2. I created test 2. That's right. So I don't actually have a pool, but I could use, questions that already exist to create my random block. So that is about it for test surveys and pools. Let's move on to another item that you'll probably use pretty regularly, and that would be assignments. Okay, so we've already done tests, we've already done survey. Now we want to create an assignment. And like I showed you that test surveys and pools appear in a content area and also as a course tool. Assignments are just accessed from the assessments tab when you're in a content area. So if I click on assignment, it opens up where I can create the assignment. So I can call this assignment number 2. My directions, please complete. And once again, you get your full content editor. So if you wanted to put in an attachment, an image, a video, if you wanted to change the text, bold it, italicize, underline, maybe have a bulleted list, change the font, you can do that from these 3 lines right here. If with this assignment I needed to attach a file, I can do that right from here. I can browse my computer and attach a file. Maybe they need to complete a sheet with guided prompts, and I have that saved elsewhere, and I can put it right in to this assignment right here. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll grab something we'll just grab that. Okay, so now I can see that I have this file attached to my assignment. give it a due date. Once I give it a due date, that due date will show on the calendar. If you are using the calendar within Blackboard or within UBlearns, this due date will now show. It will also show in the My Grades area. So when students go into My Grades to check their grades, they'll be able to filter by upcoming assignments, which because the due dates are provided. If you input them, and so they'll be able to say, I just want to see what's coming up soon, and they could click on upcoming assignments and they'll see the due date for the assignments that are left for the semester. Points possible is required when creating an assignment. However, it can be 0 if you want it to be. You may associate a rubric. So if I had a writing assignment that I was having the students do, and I wanted to associate a rubric that showed, the point range for grammar and mechanics and intro and conclusion and formatting, theme, however I wanted to create this rubric, I could create it right from here, or I could select it if I had already created it, and I could attach it to this assignment. And if I was to do that, I wonder if I have any created. Oh, good. If I was to do that, once I associate the rubric, it says here, show to students, and I can choose, yes, show that to students with the rubric scores so they can see what's expected. And they will be able to see the rubric before they complete the assignment. Submission details. This is where I choose if I want this to be an individual submission, which means all students have to complete it individually. If I did have group work going in my course, this is where I could choose if I wanted this to be a group assignment that they complete as a group together. Also, again, number of attempts. If I just want to give them a single attempt, which is the default, they'll only be able to submit once. And if they made a mistake and they tried to submit again, it would be closed to them. When we do the Grade Center workshop, you'll see that there is an option to allow one additional attempt, just in case a student calls you and says, I forgot, my works cited page. I need to submit this again. You can either clear their attempt or just allow them one additional attempt just so they could submit it again. There's also multiple attempts. And once you get that, they ask how many do you want to, allow, and then how is it going to be scored? Is it going to be an average? Is it going to be first graded attempt, lowest, highest, last graded attempt? So you do have those options again. Plagiarism tools. UBlearns Blackboard has a built-in plagiarism tool called Safe Assign. And if you were to choose this, it would be run up against, internet sources and a inventory or repository of papers that have already been submitted to UBlearns and all of Blackboard, I believe. And you can let them see their originality reports, which show, the percentage that they have a match. Oh, and then you can exclude submissions from institutional and global references databases. So I don't know why you'd want to do that, though, if you really wanted to check for plagiarism. But so you do have a plagiarism tool built in for your students. Grading options. Anonymous grading. You can grade these assignments and not know whose assignment you are grading. So the students' names are hidden from you during the grading process. Obviously cutting down maybe on any bias that a faculty member might feel, although I'm sure no faculty members grade with any bias, but it does just let you read these anonymously. And then delegated grading, you can, if you have maybe TAs in your class that help you with your grading, you can enable delegated grading and you can give them grading responsibilities so that it's okay for them to grade also. Display of grades. If you choose the primary display of score, they'll see it as a number, but you can also choose text, percentage, letter, incomplete, complete, and the letter would be from a grade schema, and that will go over when we do the grade center. The secondary grade display would just be for you, so the students see the primary grade display. If you chose the secondary one, you would see this in the grade center. So you would see score and letter, the student only sees score. You can also choose for this to be included in the grade center grading calculations or not. So if you say not, the students will submit, but it won't count toward any type of calculated final grade or midterm grade that you might have going on. So it won't affect anything. Show it to the students in My Grades. So if you're using My Grades, which you should be if you're using the Grade Center, and students want to check their grade, you're allowing them to do so. And then showing statistics. So if you want the students to see the average and median grades for this item in their My Grades section, you would check this box. Maybe they want to see how they're doing, compared to the average, compared to the median. If they're above it, below it, right on it, you would check this box so they could see that. Once again, when you're creating anything in Blackboard, it asks you if you want to make it available, and if you don't, they won't see it. And then you can also limit the availability. You can have a display after and a display until. And tracking number of views, you can see how many times students went into this assignment and looked at it. So now that I have all of my items chosen, and my rubric attached, and my points possible there, and my attachment that they need to use, I would hit submit. And now the assignment is created, and you'll see it's available, and you'll see my file there that I attached. And if I was to click on it, students would also see the due date, the points possible. They would click and be able to see the rubric, how they're being graded, what they're being graded on, what the grade, point range or point percentage range is for each item. They could do a text submission, which means they would literally probably copy and paste their answer into a text box, or they could do it in a Word document and attach it. So it goes into, it lands in the Grade Center. Both the text submission and the file would land in the Grade Center. They would just display in two different ways. And a student can also add comments as they're submitting, like I tried really hard, or, this wasn't my best work, or, something like I didn't understand the assignment. I hope this is okay. So once they attach their assignment or their text submission, then they hit submit, and it goes into the Grade Center for you. And you will see now, because I created this assignment and I assigned points to it, automatically the Grade Center column is created. So those would be the assessments that are available within Blackboard or within UBlearns. And, lots of options, lots of things you can do within Blackboard to assess students. So that would be the end of this session. Once again, ever any questions for the Office of Instructional Design and Development, our email is gseid@buffalo.edu. You can email any questions you may have. This recording will be put up on GSE Engage, which is the GSE IDD blog. And thank you for attending.